Welcome to the Corporate Advisors Masterclass. My name's Roger Baden-Powell. I'd like to share with you my experience of corporate deals. I'd like you to know what I'd have liked to have known when I first started out in the business 30 years ago. You may be an accountant or a lawyer, perhaps already advising clients on corporate deals, or you may own or manage a company planning an acquisition. Perhaps you're an investment banker, leaving the world of mega deals to buy a business of your own, or looking for a portfolio career as a non-executive director. Or you may be selling a company and just want to double check that your professional advisors are acting effectively on your behalf. Whatever your professional business or background, these videos will extend your commercial knowledge and expertise to a level where you'll thoroughly understand how to plan, negotiate, manage and close a corporate deal at the best price and on the best terms. During my career in the City of London as a corporate advisor and investment banker, I've advised numerous small to medium-sized companies, SMEs, on mergers and acquisitions. 12 years ago, I distilled this experience into 16 one-day courses. I've now presented these courses 724 times in and around Europe, sometimes as far away as Moscow, Riyadh and Johannesburg. A great many accountants, lawyers, corporate advisors, bankers and business owners have attended my one-day courses, in fact 7,507, over 98% of whom have said in their written testimonials that my practical and commercial emphasis on examples of real deals was very effective. My courses are therefore a tried and tested learning format based on examples of real deals. I've now videoed 5 of my most popular one-day courses for those who prefer a fully flexible online training program which cuts out the cost of travel and increases the time available for clients. Your interest in watching this video means that you're well educated, highly motivated and already very good at what you do. But you may be concerned that there are gaps in your knowledge, and these gaps are obstructing you from developing your career along the lines that you'd find both interesting and financially rewarding. I will fill these gaps and remove these obstructions so that you'll advance your career as a corporate advisor with considerable confidence, satisfied clients and increased fee income. Professional advisors watching this video may also be concerned that your over-specialization in technical advice could result in the loss of some of your larger clients once they realize that they're outgrowing your capacity to advise them. This is now a very real risk for us all because technical expertise is now almost a commodity item, and those of us that sell it exclusively are finding it increasingly difficult to differentiate ourselves from the competition. Core professional services like audit, financial accounts, general legal advice, tax returns, legal documentation and compliance are increasingly being automated and done online. It's therefore essential to replace these declining income streams with services that are indispensable to a client's future success, rather than just focusing on services that are merely reliably useful. Despite the commoditization of many professional skills, however, we will always retain the same amount of professional time, and the best way to secure a continuing high price for the ongoing use of our professional time is to offer good corporate advice. My videos will enable you to focus on establishing yourself as a respected corporate advisor so that you'll preserve the continued loyalty of your clients, because strategy, trust, confidentiality and real long-term commitment can't be automated or outsourced. However, if you feel that to learn how to become an effective corporate advisor may be too time-consuming to focus on right now, or that the learning curve will be too steep for you, or even if you decide to spend the time and climb the learning curve, your clients won't pay for your increased knowledge and expertise, I can assure you immediately that with these videos, the journey will be short, efficient and financially very rewarding. A very real problem for professional advisors is that many of us are becoming trapped in over-specialization. This was never a danger 40 years ago. In my first job, I started as a messenger. We weren't called trainees in those days, as nobody ever trained us to do anything. We were referred to as gophers, as in go for this or go for that. There were very few rules and no compliance departments. So by working flexibly and informally in all areas of a firm, we all got a very well-rounded education on how the financial business and its markets worked before we began to specialise. This was a learning track followed by all professional advisors until full acceptance into their chosen profession, by partnership or otherwise. In my case, as a member of the London Stock Exchange, followed by a partnership in a firm of London stockbrokers. Nowadays, however, because we all have to be specifically licensed to be allowed to conduct any investment activity, specialisation begins almost immediately. The result of this is that many professional advisors have a very good knowledge of a specific activity, but not much practical experience outside their own specialisation. This leads to a fear that you could walk into a dangerous swamp if you decide to shift the focus of your activities onto a wider area. I will eliminate this lack of confidence and promise you that these videos will be a carefully planned journey to extend your technical expertise into a full corporate advisory service. You'll be surprised to find that this will be easier than it looks. And it's easier still if you split the task into manageable sections, visualize precisely where you'd like to be and exactly what you want to achieve. It's very important to do this because if you can't imagine it, you won't be able to create it. Let me also say, quietly, that it's also important to visualize what you don't want and don't want to be. A good friend of mine recently described himself to me as a tired old circus lion who every year was forced to jump through ever smaller flaming hoops in the hope of receiving a juicy steak which never materialised. Let's not go there. My videos will close the gap between where you are and where you'd like to be. To set the scene, let me first describe the nature of the corporate advisory business so that you can decide where to focus your abilities. Essentially, it's a never-ending theatrical performance. Companies are formed, they raise money, and they make acquisitions, and they enter into joint ventures and strategic alliances. They sell their subsidiaries to third parties or to their own managers. They may float their shares on the stock market and then leave the stock market and become private companies again. Along the way, they get taken over, they overextend themselves and restructure, they become insolvent, and they're wound up. The broken pieces are then all put back together again with different players repackaging the corporate ingredients of assets, liabilities, practices and ideas, and the show rolls on. Underpinning all this activity, professional advisors process the transactions. They carry out due diligence investigations, prepare reports on past performance and future prospects, and draft documents evidencing the agreements reached on behalf of companies by directors and owners who must at all times comply with complex rules and regulations which, if misunderstood, could result in civil or criminal liability, perhaps both. My videos will tell you how to structure a safe and profitable participation in this corporate theatre. You'll see that corporate finance is essentially the art of the possible, where imagination, determination, and the ability to attract clients and to keep them, and most importantly to charge them good fees, are the essential ingredients of success. All this can be learnt very, very slowly by spending a few years watching seasoned practitioners and piecing together the tricks of the trade. However, that's an enormous waste of time. So I'd like to help you fast forward your progress towards a very rewarding career, not only financially, but it's also energizing to deal with happy and excited clients. Clients aren't happy when seeking tax advice. They're not excited when defending a professional negligence claim or arguing the correct procedure for revenue recognition. They're happy and excited when contemplating a corporate deal which will transform their lives. On a few occasions over the years, usually very late at night, I've been thanked by a client clutching a signed sale and purchase agreement with tears in their eyes. That sort of thing is very touching, especially to an old cynic like me. Also, and more importantly, when a large amount of money changes hands, that's the best time to send an invoice. I've never seen a client open one of my invoices, but I'd like to imagine that the reaction will be something like this. First, a sharp intake of breath, which is then followed by a sigh, followed by the thought, well, I suppose it was worth it. That would indicate to me that my fee was perfectly pitched. I'll explain how to charge good fees in my next video. However, before planning how best to move forward, it's very important that you should first identify what's holding you back. If it's lack of knowledge or confidence, then you're in the right place, because my videos will increase both your knowledge and your confidence to a level where you'll be giving strategic business advice to clients in their corporate deals rather than just processing the decisions made by others. If, however, you're trapped in your present position, you must immediately start planning your escape. You must dissolve the barriers obstructing your progress and reinvent yourself as an effective corporate advisor. I did it myself, as I'll tell you in a moment, so I understand the process. It's not easy. Worthwhile objectives rarely are. However, with my focused guidance, it won't be as difficult as it looks. Often, the problem is that if you've decided you're good enough to be an effective corporate advisor, you're probably already very good at what you currently do. Consequently, your employer or partners won't want you to change direction. They can't afford to lose your expertise in the area where your contribution is already well respected and valued. What should be done? There are two solutions: a safe gradual approach or a high-risk nuclear option. To take it gradually, you have to persuade your colleagues that they should either let you extend the activities of the firm into corporate finance advice, or that you can make a significant contribution to the firm's existing corporate finance team. My videos will give you the best cards to play in either situation, because you'll be able to demonstrate conclusively that you thoroughly understand the business and that your larger clients will be lost to competitors if your partners don't give you their full support. When I was young and over-enthusiastic, I had to choose the nuclear option. I was in my early 30s and was the partner in charge of equity research for a large firm of London stockbrokers. I was also a well-known property analyst. My published research notes were frequently reported on in the business sections of the national newspapers, and I commented on market developments on the BBC. My firm had a very successful corporate finance department, which I wanted to join. We were the official stockbroker to over 100 quoted companies, and the corporate finance department was clearly understaffed. The answer from my partners to my request for this reassignment was an immediate and resounding no, as they felt it important not to risk losing the firm's market position in property research. My high-risk nuclear response was, either you let me join the corporate finance department or I leave the firm. Therefore, you've already lost your property analysts, so the only decision to make is, do you want me in the corporate finance department or don't you? To which the answer was, eventually, yes. This was a very high risk and extreme course of action, and I mention it to emphasise that it's often very difficult to get into the corporate finance business because, unless you start as a graduate corporate finance trainee with a major bank or large firm of accountants, you'll already be very good at your job when you decide to make the change. And so your colleagues will do everything they can to stop you because you're too valuable in your current position. I can assure you, however, that the risk and the effort is very much worth it. Certainly was for me. So let me share with you the knowledge you need to transform yourself into a successful and respected corporate advisor. Although it may appear to be a mountain to climb, my videos will give you a tunnel through that mountain so you'll reach your destination very quickly without the effort and frustration that I encountered during the early years in the business. I can also promise you the corporate finance business is interesting, very enjoyable, and provided you know how to structure your fees extremely profitable, is worth the effort. My first major problem in my new corporate finance job, however, was that although I was a lawyer with some technical expertise, I knew almost nothing about the corporate finance business. Fortunately, because of the size of the firm, I was almost immediately involved in quite a number of corporate deals, so with the help of the firm's clients, I could pick it up as I went along. As a shortcut for you, however, my videos will remove this chance element in my career and will provide you with a logical structure to follow and a ready-made set of tools that you can begin to use immediately. The symbiotic relationship between client and advisor was graphically illustrated to me several years ago when I was presenting a public course on mergers and acquisitions. It was a fairly small group of 8, one of whom was a director of a company in Riyadh. He was considering buying a company in London, so it was a bit unfortunate that another participant on the course from Dubai, who'd been appointed the company's principal advisor on the proposed acquisition, had joined the course to learn how to do it. Although it's not usually so transparent, our clients pay us to learn the corporate advisory business by doing deals for them. So the sooner you get started, or the more deals you can get involved in, the quicker you'll be able to move forward in your corporate advisory career. To begin with, it's worth emphasising that corporate finance isn't rocket science. Nonetheless, many peripheral players shiver at the edge of the pool because they've been led to believe that it's a bit of a dark art, best left to the experts. However, the truth is that the details of medicine, law and accountancy are much more difficult to understand. Like any cult, however, corporate finance is full of hype. Experienced practitioners invent new terms and procedures every year which create a pseudo-complexity to baffle clients and outsiders. This helps to limit the competition and to increase the fees. Consequently, if we aren't entirely comfortable in a client meeting where other professionals are present, few of us will risk asking a question or expressing an opinion which might attract a negative assessment of our abilities. This fear limits our potential and must therefore be removed. For a start, I can assure you that everybody, right up to the top of the tree, feels nervous when treading on a new patch. I remember giving a series of one-day courses in London to the senior relationship managers of a large commercial bank. These were very experienced players who advised companies with turnovers of not less than £500 million a year. However, the bank was very concerned about losing their largest clients because some areas of corporate finance were beyond the bank's advisory capability, in particular public takeovers and flotations. So they'd have to introduce their clients to one of the major investment banks, such as Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley, to handle such business. This prospect was okay in itself, but the fear was that during any subsequent meeting with such competitive investment bankers being present, it had been made entirely obvious to the client that their trusted relationship manager knew practically nothing at all about the corporate finance business, which at the very least would be embarrassing. My job, therefore, was to transform the self-assurance of the bank's senior relationship managers by teaching them what they should know, but equally importantly, what they didn't have to know. A very important distinction. So that if they found themselves in a meeting which began to focus on an area which they didn't fully understand, they'd be completely confident to ask for immediate clarification without feeling in any way inferior. My training course was nothing to do with character building or social polish. It was just to ensure that their reaction to an incomplete explanation would be irritation instead of confusion. I'll show you what you should know so that you'll feel genuinely confident to dismiss any grey area, either as a matter of opinion, a technical detail for somebody else, or irrelevant. That's a very safe rock on which to stand. A corporate advisory career always starts with your first deal. This usually leads to a second deal and then leads to several others. Wherever you are on this continuum, my videos will consolidate your existing knowledge, deepen your understanding of the business, and provide you with an effective toolbox to transform your corporate advisory activities. We all get better and more experienced by doing deals, but to begin with, we all need a helping hand. It's rather like learning how to ride a bicycle. You begin with a parent holding onto the back seat, and then after some practice, which increases your skill and perception of risk, you can suddenly ride on your own. And after a while, you can shout, "Look, no hands. That's where you want to be." In my next video, I'll describe all the corporate advisory roles within which you can choose to operate, and how to charge good fees for your extended knowledge and expertise. I'll also highlight the importance of avoiding the various crooks and sharks you'll inevitably meet in such a high-value business.